So Jignesh, thank you so much for joining us in the next edition of the Fire Up series, a series of conversations with startup founders on things that each startup has done very well, and there's something to share with other startups. So in your experience, you managed to look at opportunities and avenues of getting emerging technologies into enterprises. So that's what we thought we should just hear from you and get your experiences. So thanks for joining us, Jignesh.
It's a pleasure, sir. Thank you for having me.
So just to set the context, in a couple of minutes, can you just quickly narrate your journey, entrepreneurial journey, and how did you get to where you are today with PerspectAI?
My journey started somewhere in the end of 2012. That's when I was working with Accenture, my first job, for 6 months into the company. I did not like it much. I wanted to do more than what I was doing there. So that's when we
I think we
started.
we should encourage the company like Accenture to do more, so we get more entrepreneurs. Make it more.
But now Accenture is the customer, so I won't come in much. So yeah, that's the point. A lot of students like us are in the college doing a lot of activities, and suddenly they go out to the jobs. Sometimes they get the right job where they might be really excited about what they're doing, and unfortunately, I wasn't there in the right place then. So I had to move out. Started my first company at the age of 21. In fact, as soon as I started, I moved to IIIT Hyderabad, CIE. That's when you started something called Launchpad. So we were part of the first generation of Launchpad in IIIT CIE. That was more of an education-based company. We were trying to teach parallel curriculums of practical nature of education to kids in the schools. So while the teachers teach the theory, we wanted to go back and teach them how to make experiments from trash just available out of your home. So that was what we were doing, but unfortunately we couldn't scale it up. We need good trainers. Everyone should be as good as us, but we couldn't afford those good ones just because we were passionate. Not we cannot expect everyone to be as passionate as that. So we had to wrap the company in 1.5 years. I moved back to a job. Most of the team members went back to different jobs. Again, the bug hit in 2016. That's when we started Loop Reality. So when we started Loop Reality, the idea was all about how can we take leverage of VR to solve the same problem we were solving earlier. So the scalability is possible. We can reach out to the maximum audience out there and do the best with what we have. But as we got in, that was when that was too early for VR in India, not just in India for that matter, anywhere in the world. The devices, the hardware, the technology, the platforms, tools, too early. So we didn't know where to start. So we started from scratch. We learned ourselves, and in the journey, we realized to create something as big as what we were expected to create, it takes a lot of money and capital and time and resources, which we don't have. We need to have a Bahubali team. So unfortunately, we didn't have that. So we had to pivot. We created our first project called Loop Fit, a VR-based cycling device. We thought, okay, can we solve the problem of engagement in gyms? So that's when we created a AI-powered. When I say AI, it's simple. You do not drink water, you not do anything. You have small sensors in it, so it understands your oxygen saturations, etc. So it knows whether you are dehydrated. It asks you to stop cycling, drink water, and it asks you to wear a headset. Visualize that you are in the Manhattan or somewhere and ride the bicycle around. So that was what we created, but unfortunately, too early into the market. Fitness plus VR plus AI, that too in Indian landscape, with that kind of cost, we didn't really were planning to sell it at that point. We were more of a college enthusiastic kids who wanted to build something exciting. So we did that. We got a lot of appreciation, but not any money. We spoke to some 50, 60 investors, spent some 6 months scouting for money to raise funds. Unfortunately, with no luck, we couldn't do that. So in that time, we had to survive. During that point, we have to survive. So we were taking up small POC projects from companies, large enterprises who do not have their own teams of VR. That's when we realized there is a great opportunity here in the L&D space and the talent space in organizations. So we thought, can we use the same to engage, at the same time understand these people by leveraging the technology that we have at hand. So that's when we pivoted. We started PerspectAI in 2017, raised a small capital. Lucky to have our initial angel investors who believed in us with good capital. Did a lot of research. Again, with no business background, we kind of burned that money, wasting it in research than taking it to market. So as we realized, more people came in, good funds and good team members joined in. Now we're in a good shape, I would say, trying to scale up into the larger picture of the market.
So what is the current enterprise opportunity with PerspectAI? What is the enterprise opportunity you kind of are going after?
In fact, we started with an assumption, but COVID has proved our assumption right. So what we are doing right now is we are using games for hiring the millennials in the organizations remotely. So remote hiring is the primary use case. Talent acquisition using games is the crux of it. So that's what we were doing. But then also there is something that happened with COVID. Hiring went on freeze across the world. So that means the talent acquisition market, which we believed we'll get a lot of business in March and April because of new financial years, a lot of new budgets, etc., it did not happen. All these budgets are still on froze. So we said, okay, can we repurpose our tool and still make money out of what we have and be value to our customers? And tomorrow, when the doors open, we might have the first opportunity. So that's when we created something called BC19. It's an abbreviation for Beat COVID-19. So we are trying to help organizations to beat the blues of COVID-19 using the same games that we created, but in a different way. So we are now asking employers to use our games to engage these employees remotely working from home. A game every day. Let them play that for 5 minutes so they get engaged. They talk to people. They talk about their scores and activities. At the same time, they have leaderboards, so you can also give a small prize every day or a reward every day to these employees. So that's a kind of engagement for these employees. And at the same time, in the back end, since these are all neurocognitive games, we understand these true potential of these candidates. Can they solve problems? Can they reason? Can they multitask? Typically, the abilities, the 21st century skills that you would need to tackle the new normal that we are getting into. So, are your employees ready for the new normal? That's what we are going to give to them as a report by the end of the whole campaign.
So how is it being received?
It only started 3 weeks ago. So we have our first set of customers. We have onboarded Byju's, Rapido, a couple of startups who are early adopters, I would say. They're excited to try this at least to start with. Now we would only get to know the real use case once it is completely utilized. So it's a 5 week program. So we would be looking for another 3 to 4 weeks to look at the first response from our existing customers. But otherwise, we are getting good number of inquiries now, and a lot of companies are getting back to us for the first product that I mentioned, the PerspectAI talent acquisition product as well, because they believe the future is going to be only remote hiring. And when that happens, a lot of people, especially the millennials, do not have the laptops or machines. So they are looking at mobile-based assessments. And the assessments that are there in the market today are question and answers, problem solve, the math, and etc., which is not really as interesting and engaging for these kids because they can't take the same assessment from every company they apply to. So that's too much for them. That's so many exams put to them in a short duration, which they don't want to take. So that's where companies are really interested in what we are building. So these inquiries are also coming in back again. So just that we are hoping once the hiring starts again for the campus placements or even for the frontline under 3-4 years experience, we will have the opportunity opened up big time.
So how do you, in this case, like if you take the whole hiring talent acquisition solution, you have to convince them on the science of it, right? In terms of where is that whole psychometry, all that coming in, and also on the technology of it. I mean, is it okay? Like AR, VR is something probably they're not using for anything else, most organizations at this point. So how was that experience been? How did you kind of manage to convince them on both of this?
In fact, the clarity that I have to give us. So we stepped out of VR last year. So we are not doing anything in VR and AR. So what happened was last year we were part of the Facebook acceleration program for VR and AR startups across the world. They took us to the valley. I was there. After listening to people there, the startups there, the Oculus team there, what I realized personally is the market for VR is going to take a little more time than what we are expecting. So until that comes in, we can't wait. We already waited 3 years and we burned a lot of money. So we have to move on. And when the time is right, maybe we'll come back. So that's when we took the hard step saying, VR is not the way forward. Mobile is the only way forward, especially considering the scalability aspects. So that's where we pivoted. Now we are a complete mobile solution. Now, coming back to the convincing part, how do we convince these people on technology, on psychology, on data sciences, on the validity of the data and metrics and everything that we have? It was tough for us when we started doing this because none of us come from the psychology background or the HR background or the IO psychology or anything for that matter. So 2 years ago, luckily, we came across Dr. Singh, Dr. Puranjay Singh from Metal. He was one of the founders and chief of psychology at Metal, who created the backbone of Metal psychology. So Metal got exited 2 years ago to Mercer, to a good deal in India. So when that happened, he took the exit, and he found us. We found him. Somehow it happened, and he invested in the company, joining us as chief of strategy and psychology. So now we have people who are the authority in the subject, with 25 years into the IO psychology, been building these metrics assessments for some time, with successful companies, successful exits. So that's the kind of background we started building into the psychology team. So these are the people who build our metrics, build our games, and they take these games and deploy it on thousands of people to get the reliability validity studies through statistics. So once that is built, we also do a correlation study with the existing benchmarks and gold standard exams, and see how much of our test is correlating with the scores that are from these gold standard tests. Once we are satisfied with the results, typically on a scale of 0 to 1, if your test is zero point 0.5 and above, it's a good test. If your test is up to zero point 0.7 or anything beyond zero point 0.7, it's a gold standard test. So our tests are always zero point 0.5 and above, and those are the tests which we bring to the production. And now we are also meeting the gold standards in some cases. So that's how we took care of the psychology. So we had to tell the narrative whole story, just the way I narrated it to you now, to these HRs, saying that this is how we do it, this is what we have done, this is the team behind it, etc. So once they're convinced, yes, they know what they're doing and they're really making sense, that's when they come to the technical aspects. Now the challenge here is, when we talk to people on assessments, it's not just the abilities, but it's also a lot of things to do with personality and the personal aspects. So the data privacy aspects of employees, the data privacy aspects of the company, because now we know what this company is made of, who is good, who is not good. So we have that kind of data with us. So how do we ensure that this data is protected and taken care of, and stick to the compliance and policies across the globe? Because most of our customers, the large ones, are present everywhere. So they ensure that the rules are mapped to all these countries' rules. So they expect us to comply with the GDPRs and etc. So that's the challenge we are going through now. We started with only India as a market. Now we are moving into Singapore and Indonesia. A few of our customers like the product; they're taking it to their counterparts there. So as we go, we are learning the challenges and we are trying to solve them in terms of data and privacy.
So it is still game-based solution, right? You still have the
Yes.
game, the
So
game-based solution.
the crux is games. The core
So
of
how
the
do
whole
you
product is games.
So how do you convince like a stiff? I mean, most of the tech companies are relatively stiff in this things, right? They don't look at the world like say an animation company might look at it or a gaming company might look at it. So they look at it very in relative terms very stiff, like staid and boring practices, well-established practices. So now looking at a mobile game as a way of hiring the right candidate, how is uh, that whole idea, how has that been received? I mean, what has been your challenges and how did you convince them that this is worth considering?
In fact, we couldn't yet convince the tech guys, because for them still Java, Python, C, C++ is more important than the rest of the potential abilities. So if you look at the way people hire, especially the campus placements and the fresher roles, we tend to give them an aptitude test first. So it's a combination of, can they solve problems, can they understand, can they reason well. So all these logical reasonings, verbal logic, the math, numerical reasoning, etc. These are the core of it. Now, along with it, they also try to test the basics of the technical capabilities in most of the jobs that we look at. Uh, so we said, okay, let's not worry about the technical aspects, because there is Hacker Earths, Hacker Ranks, and a bunch of other strong companies out there, and we don't want to go head on with them at this point. So we said, let's counter that. Let's productively build something which will complement them. While the companies use the hacker ranks and hackers for technical abilities, can they use our tool to understand the cognitive abilities, the personality, the behavior, the motives, the language abilities, as well as the communication skills? And also, we consciously took a decision saying that let's not attack every job out there in the market. Let's focus on specific jobs to start with as a go-to-market strategy. So we said we'll only focus on sales, BPO, KPO, support, and operations roles. So these are the roles where there is large large, massive hiring going on, and there is a great attrition also in these roles. So that means, say for example, one of our customers in BFSI who is into insurance, etc. This customer hires 600 people every month only for sales, and there is support. There is a lot of other things. So there are hundreds of such customers in the same space. So we said, can we, and these are the jobs at 50,000 to 30,000 rupee jobs, and they don't want to use a lot of HR capability to segregate, filter, screen, interview these people. So that's when they wanted to automate the whole system, and we came into picture. So we are looking at primarily BFSI startups, pharma, etc., where the large scale hiring is required in these roles that I mentioned about, and we can first crack the market and get in with larger volumes.
So
Eventually, as
are they asking you to integrate with other systems that they have if it's going to be part of the automated process or at least semi-automated? So do you need to integrate with other systems or
of
build
course,
vertical capabilities?
of course. So that's always a requirement because all these companies use a standard tool called ATS, the application tracking system. But there are a bunch of tools out there, Talios to Oracles to the recent ones like David Box from Hyderabad. So there are a bunch of ATS platforms out there. So they want us to integrate our product with that. And that's not a big challenge because it's a simple API call of get and put. So it's simple one. So for our team to go ahead and integrate, just that the company has to give a go ahead, and then the counterparts have to work with us for a month or two to get this system rolling out absolutely ready.
So
So that's the major difference.
any surprise discoveries? I mean, like in the industry where like you had some pleasant surprises in the way they reacted to certain things.
Um, I was talking to, in fact, this happened only 2 days ago. I was talking to the Singapore market, the introduction that was given to us by our customer to their counterpart in Singapore. So I was talking to them, and when I told them about, so we were discussing about the PerspectAI as a hiring tool for them when they reopen the hiring. But then I told them, we also created something new, this BC19. Would you like to explore? So they listened to the whole thing. They started laughing, and I thought, okay, you did make some mistake. And they said, it's not about a mistake. We were really excited to see or the way you put things together. So there is games, there is fun, there is leaderboards. At the same time, we understand the people, also the wellness on a weekly basis. So that's when I realized we might be just stuck to the Indian market, thinking we have built something only for India to start with. But as I heard that from the customer themselves, I think now we have more confidence in going out to the other markets and put it out there. That there are some parts we have to take care of, like the data privacy and the reliability, because the time durations are different, etc. So time zones are different, etc. But we have to work around it and reach this audience before anyone else reaches out, because there are a bunch of tools like this out there in the market, in the global space, who are in games, who are in the other things that I mentioned about, but very few does all of them, and there is none of them in India who does games as assessments. So that's the advantage for us. Since there is no one in India, we have that early market advantage, moving as an early bird. At the same time, we also brought in, by looking at our Indian Jugaad version of bringing things together to solve the major problems at cost-effective ways. We brought multiple things together on the same platform, solving the problem of employer, because they don't want to integrate and work with 6 different vendors and bring them together. So that's our interesting learning. So if you just focus on one thing for Indian market, it might not work. Especially it was right more than ever in our case. So bringing things together, making them more value, bringing them more value at low cost, is the Indian appetite at this point for large scale.
So talking about learning. So now just to conclude, from your journey through these 3 startups, in one growth hack tip that you'd like to share with other founders, especially founders in their early revenue stages, one growth hack tip that you would share from your experiences.
In fact, a lot of lessons, especially more lessons than ever in the last 6 months to 1 year, because now we started doing real business. So one quick growth hack for anyone out there, especially in the very early stage, would be, don't waste your time in building product. Sell it before you even build it. Once you have someone bought it, that's when you start building it. That's when you be transparent with them, understand their requirement, and build for their requirement. Rather, you don't assume things and then waste your time, money, resources, only to realize nothing of this sort will work out there in the market. that the strong crux point here, crux for us here is, you might be an innovator, you might be a visionary, you might be thinking about the future, but that doesn't work unless and until you make money out of it today. So forget about money, forget about raising funds. All these things will happen when you really are making business or doing business or building really solid product with a lot of users. So the biggest learning for me that way is build only after you sell.
No, makes a lot of sense. I think we're hearing a lot of it. And almost every third or fourth founder gives that as in some varying form as one most significant growth hack tip. I think no two ways around it. Like it's best way to build a product is to build something for which you already have a customer. So no two ways around it. Thank you so much. And the space you are in, it's not if somebody can come and ask you about such a product. So even more so, you must understand what the customer needs before you even can build. That this unusual product category, so it's not easy to even say like somebody is doing it, I will just replicate it. You have to figure out and then build it. So I think even in your case, even more so. So Jignesh, thank you so much for taking the time joining us today. Hope all is well during the lockdown, and glad to hear of customer calls and such, so which is a very, very good sign. So all the best with PerspectAI and the whole journey as an entrepreneur.
Thank you very much, sir. Thanks for taking out the time to talk to me. Share our lessons to our audience out there.